You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do. Hello, people-centric leaders. On today's podcast, we have Bethany Taff and Don Harkey. Bethany, do you want to say hi real quick?
Hey.
Hey. Don, do you want to say hi?
I've got the deep voice on today. Hey.
Good.
Hey, everybody. It's just me, Don.
Hi, everybody. So we're into the new year now, and we thought that we would talk a little bit about feedback today, because with goals and stuff like that, feedback happens. And we've talked a lot about how to give feedback, but maybe not as much about how to receive feedback. And I read an article about this weekend about building resilience and doing some training on how to receive feedback. And I thought, well, that's silly. We can just talk about it. Let's just talk about how to receive feedback. So I thought today we would unpack, what do you do with the feedback that you get, whether that's positive, negative, whether you think it's true, whether you don't think it's true. So that's where we're going to start today. So first of all, Bethany, you are amazing at both giving and receiving feedback. You're an amazing coach, and you take feedback really well, even when it's not given to you very well. So what are some of your tricks of the trade? What do you take from this conversation?
I'm laughing because you're like, you take it even if it's not given very well.
You do, because I don't give it very well. I know this about me.
That's not true. That is not true. It's a good question about what are the tips? What are the tips and tricks of it? And I have not processed this fully.
I know.
But I think it's just like what else are you going to do with it? Like, I think that sometimes when you get feedback, it feels really crappy if it's bad feedback. It's like sometimes it just is like an ego hit and it just feels crummy. And I think maybe then there's like fight or flight in some of us. It's just like, how are we going to handle this? And I think that it's like, so one, I'll just say, like, I still feel the impacts of like negative feedback. But I think what I've learned is that, like, I can either just sit in the negativeness and just feel bad about myself, or I can see if there's an opportunity to do something with it, even if I don't agree with all of the feedback. And so I think, and then the other part of it is, like, if it's people that I really, really respect too, and I really respect the two of you. So, like, if you guys are giving me feedback, I'm like, oh, there's probably really something there. And I'm going to take this as a kindness because I think they see an opportunity for me to get better and to continue to grow. And maybe this is a blind spot for me. And so I want to do something with that. And then I think it's like some of the feedback that when it doesn't feel so good, and maybe it's from somebody like you don't have as much trust with, then it's like finding somebody not to like tell you that person is wrong in their feedback, but to just say, like, hey, I've been given some feedback before, like recently, and this is what the feedback is, and I really trust you. And so I want to know, like, do you see this too? And if that's a thing, like, can you help me talk through it? And so, like, kind of getting some coaching from somebody that you do trust, especially if it's maybe coming from a source that you're like, I don't know if I've seen that, or if their voice is as weighty to me or something like that too. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it definitely helps. Yeah. I was sort of thinking of putting Dawn on the spot. Dawn, can you think of a time where you got some feedback that maybe you didn't disagree with, and what you did with that?
Some feedback that I didn't disagree with.
Or that you didn't agree with. Sorry.
Oh, that I didn't agree with. Okay. Feedback that I didn't agree with. And how did I take that feedback? Yeah, I can think of some times early in my career, especially. I can think of some times at ADM. I'm trying to think of a specific example of it. I got some feedback one time. We were trying to start up this piece of equipment, and we had We were not allowed as the engineers to run the night shift to get into the program to look behind the scenes to try to figure out what was going on this packaging line we were running. We were running a packaging line. And I had some experience in doing that in the previous process I had run. So I was used to being able to look behind the scenes. We were not able to look behind the scenes. And so trying to run the process overnight, I felt like I had one hand tied behind my back. So I was really, really frustrated with it. And one of the senior managers came to me and said, "Don, you're not leading your team well at night by complaining that you don't have access to this thing in terms of how you troubleshoot it. And it's hindering the way that you're troubleshooting the machine because you're not just looking for a thing. You're saying, I would like to solve it that way, and I can't solve it that way. And all your energy is going towards, you're not letting me solve it that direction instead of figuring out a different way to solve it." In hindsight, that was very good feedback and makes a lot of sense.
Good feedback. Yeah.
It's good feedback and makes total sense. In the moment, I thought it was a bunch of crap, and I told them so. And I said, "You don't know, you're not working night shift with me. You don't know what that's like. I'm trying to make it better. It makes no sense why you wouldn't allow me into there. It shows me that you don't trust me. And if you don't trust me as an engineer, then I didn't hear it, and I pushed back." Now, what I said wasn't wrong. That wasn't entirely wrong either. But that response made us, now we were talking at each other. We were talking about two separate problems at the same time, and not really. We were cross talking, is what was happening. We did an episode on that a long time ago, cross talking, where one person's talking about one problem, another person's talking about another problem. You're telling me that I'm leading my team in the wrong direction. I'm telling you that you're not trusting me enough. Both those things could be true. Both those things might be false, but we're not talking about the same issue anymore. So that's a time I could think where I didn't handle it very well, because like Bethany said, when I get negative feedback about something, it hurts. There's something internal that happens. My stomach gets tied up in knots a little bit. My heart starts to race a little bit. I can still feel my blood pressure kind of rise a little bit. Like you feel something about that. And I think that, when you start that process, sometimes it's hard to respond, especially when you're younger, less experienced.
I think you both touched on, Bethany, you said fight or flight. And then Don, you just talked about like all the emotional responses. And I think that's why feedback is so hard. I have a physical, emotional response to feedback. And over the years, I've learned to like pause for a minute. But I think one of the best things that people do when they give me feedback, or that I've started to do when I get feedback, is I can stop and just say like, "Thank you. I'm going to process this and come back to it later." Because sometimes you do not have to respond in the moment. And sometimes responding in the moment is the worst thing you can do. I probably shouldn't have responded in that moment, right? But you could say, "Thank you for this feedback. I'm going to do some processing, and I will have questions when I'm done processing this." Or I've seen you say things like, "I'm not in the headspace for feedback right now. Let's have this conversation later." Like, I think those are good tricks to just sort of saying, I can accept this feedback, but just not in this exact moment, because I do think our emotions start to take over.
Yeah. And I think what's hard about receiving feedback is you can't control how the feedback is delivered, to your point. And so I think sometimes, though, like being able to do your best to separate, like, and to create a distinction on the feedback that you're receiving, to say like, is this something that somebody's saying like, "You are fundamentally broken and there's like there's no hope for you and this is just how you are." You know what I mean? Like versus, "No, this is something that I've observed and I think that you could make a change on it." And is that a personal attack? Like most of the time, like probably not. And so I think that's where like being able to like, and I think mentally in the moment when we receive feedback, I think a lot of us just like blend all of that and we hear it as, this is a personal attack on who I am. And that's just not the case most of the time. And so I think just being able to separate those two and say like, is this something that I could actually make a change on, or could I make a tweak or whatever? And I think some of the things like what you said, Diane, of like, that maybe I take feedback and do something with it, as like, I think there's like a moment of like, I want to create an action step. Like I want to create some positive momentum forward, like as quick as I can. So does that mean like I can take that, and what is something that I could change pretty immediately, that I could go ahead and say like, I'm going to go ahead and adjust this meeting agenda, or I don't know what is, or go have this conversation with this person or whatever, because otherwise then you just feel bad about it and you don't feel like, okay, I'm making some progress towards something. So you might as well just figure out like, what's the one thing that you can go ahead and like start doing almost immediately.
I like, Bethany, what you said about the intent piece, because you kind of started off with that and you said it so casually, it's
Right.
almost easy to say it. Like, what's the intent of the feedback of the person giving you the feedback? Because it feels, when somebody gives you negative feedback, especially, it
Mhm.
feels like an attack.
Yeah.
And people who love you don't attack you. So it's easy to forget, okay, well, you're attacking me for some reason, even though I don't know. And so I'm going to respond accordingly to the attack because it feels like an attack. If you can take a minute, I was just talking to a friend recently and she was telling me a story and she just said that, it was a conflict that she had gotten into. And she kind of realized, she's like, man, I need to remember the intent of the person, not what actually was said. Like, your intent was probably you meant to help me, and what you said wasn't helpful. It really wasn't helpful, but it was, your intent was to help me. And that going back to that intent and just taking a beat and remembering, like, okay, what are you trying to do right now? Are you trying to help me? Or are you trying to insult me? Or are you trying to put me in my place? And then taking a beat to react to, I think, is really helpful.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it is hard in the moment to think about all of those things at once, that intent piece. And Don, in the moment you said like, well, that's crap, and I'm trying to do it this way and you don't trust me. And I think had you spun that a little bit and done kind of what Bethany was saying and said, okay, I see what you see. Let me apologize. Let me also say that wasn't my intent. So let's figure out how to do this together, or let's figure out how I can shift the narrative or whatever that might look like. I think that's a really, really mature response. And it's also the hardest response.
It's a super hard response. Now, I will say, like, we've done episodes on giving feedback before. And this is kind of a dangerous point to bring up, because if you're getting the feedback and you're judging how the other person is giving you the feedback, that's not a good mindset for you to be in either. But there is a lesson to be learned, like even the example I gave, because if the person had come to me and said, hey, look, Don, it must be really frustrating for you to work all night and not have access to behind the scenes on that programming to be able to troubleshoot it. I know that's really hard, but I would like to give you some feedback on what you can control on that, which is what you can see and how you're impacting the rest of the team. If that's what, and kind of give that, there's a little different way that feedback could have been given that would have increased my odds of responding well. But again, that's an excuse. If you're like, well, they brought it to me the wrong direction. Well, you're giving up your power, right? You're giving up your empowerment with the other person, saying, I only take feedback if it's given to me perfectly. The best people that I know, and I agree, Diana, with you, and I know we keep embarrassing Bethany, but Bethany's outstanding at this. The best people I know take the feedback, whether it's done well or given badly. Like, they still take it and they know to process it. And I liked your point too of taking some time to do that, because when there's emotions involved, your emotional intelligence needs to kick in. I think that's what's changed by young Don to older Don. I think I've learned some things, and I think I've become a little bit more emotionally intelligent. And I've learned, you still feel that anger when somebody tells you something. You still feel a little bit attacked, but you got to just take a breath and go, okay, you're probably trying to help me. I need to think about that. What can I learn from this?
Yeah, and I think that's really good. And one of the things that I was thinking, and I won't like share all of the details, but I can think of like a few times when I've gotten feedback from somebody, and Dawn, like you were involved in the conversation, but you were the one who was giving me the feedback. And it's still like I definitely had like emotional reaction that was like not great. Like not necessarily towards that person, but just like, oh, like I felt all the feelings and it didn't feel great. But I think like to something that I said earlier, where it's like have somebody that you trust who can kind of help you process that, sometimes I think is important, because I think there's been a few situations like that where like Don helped me kind of think through, like filter what was part of the feedback and what wasn't part of the feedback, and to be able to say like, here's how you're feeling, but like here's what was actually said, and here's what, don't read this into the feedback, because that's not what was said, even though that's how it made me feel. And so I think that's really helpful and important to have somebody who can help help you do that too.
That reminds me when I was a little kid, I was over at a friend of mine's house, and his mom, who was an outstanding cook, made like tuna melt and for dinner. And I had never
Most
tried it.
younger people don't know what tuna melt is now.
It's hot tuna.
It's
It's
Like
hot tuna with cheese. It doesn't have cheese.
it's got cheese on it. And
It's so gross.
I like a tuna steak like that is good. So but I still probably gonna eat it like cold a little bit, right? You still kind of get it like a little bit rare. But anyway, we were eating dinner and I tried a bite of it and I was like, and I said, I do not care for this. And that was the feedback I gave. And I remember his mom getting so hurt. And I think Bethany, going back to you, is she probably felt she probably felt attacked, like we said, and she probably didn't hear, I don't like hot tuna. Like I don't think she could make 100 dishes and I would like 99 of them, and that's just the one. Like I'm not gonna like that. She probably heard me say, I don't like your cooking and I don't like you mothering us and I don't like, she probably heard like a lot more than what I actually said, which was just, I don't particularly like this dish that you made. That's true. I like that point. We tend to extrapolate it based on the feelings we're feeling and we go beyond what the person said. Oh, maybe I'm just a terrible mother then, or a terrible father, or maybe I'm a terrible worker, or I'm terrible. I'm going to spin out of control. And we coach a lot of people who struggle with that and will call and say like, hey, I got some feedback or something. We play a game sometimes, and I won't reveal the game, where people get a grade on the game. And people often get an F on the game, and I'll say like, "You guys got an F on this game," and I always laugh because I'll say it's a game. It's literally a game, and like we're just playing a game, and we're staying around, and I'm joking around, we're happy and everything. I'm like, "And you got an F," and I look around the room, and 3 people are furious at me, and they're just like, "I don't get Fs. I do not get Fs. I don't get Fs." And then even after the game is over and they've improved and they've showed that they actually could get an A, and they figured out some of them will still come back and they still could not take that feedback and say, so now do you rescind your F? Do you take it back? Do you rescind your F? And I'm like, no, I don't rescind the F because you were getting an F at the time and then you got an A. You were not good. Your idea was not good before and then it became better and that it helped you a lot. Like, I think we have to be a little more comfortable with failure. I was talking to my daughter Molly about that recently, and she said, I think I need to become more comfortable with failure. She goes, I realize what that sounds like I've never failed, but we need to become more comfortable with it. Like a failure doesn't mean you're a failure. It means that you're a successful person who just happened to fail, and it's okay.
Well, and I think you just stumbled on another reason why getting feedback is hard is because some of the feedback is tied to who you believe that you are, right? When somebody tells me feedback that's like, Diana, you're disorganized. Part of my core philosophy and who I am is that I am an organized human being, right? I am orderly and logical. So if you gave me the feedback that I was disorganized, that goes against who I believe that I am. And it's the same with that, like you got an F, right? I don't get Fs. So if you give feedback that accidentally treads on the belief of who somebody is, they're going to have a negative response to that.
Yeah, I could think of a guy I coached briefly, and it's probably bad coaching, Bethany. I think you're probably give me some feedback on this later, but he was talking about his job and how he'd gotten some feedback from his boss that said he wasn't doing his job very well. And I asked him for details on what he did. And it was like he had missed it. He had forgotten about a deadline for a project and he hadn't written it down anywhere. And so he never executed it. And then he forgot something else and he hadn't written down anywhere. And he just said, but now my boss thinks I'm bad at my whole job because I just forgot a couple things. And I said, well, it sounds like you didn't do a good job. Like it does sound like you didn't do a good job. And what I think he heard was, I'm a terrible employee. And that was so against his identity. Like, you're right, Diane. I think he put himself as like, I'm a rock star employee. Like, you're really lucky to have me. I don't screw that up. So what you just said doesn't match with my story. So now, and it backfired on me. Like, he stopped talking to me. Like, oh, well, you're them, so you're backfired. So yeah, sometimes that can happen, right? These human games that we play are difficult, and sometimes you can lose, even if you play it right. But yeah, I could have approached that differently.
Yeah. Well, and I think humans need feedback. I think we all want it. All the studies show that people are craving it, and lots of employees and people have told us like, "Oh, I wish I got more feedback." But I can see why people don't want to give it as readily because it is such a landmine. It is so like emotionally charged. But I will say we're picking on Bethany so much today. The other thing that you are really good at doing is circling back on the feedback that's given to you, and you come back and say, "Okay, I heard this, and this is what I'm going to do, and make sure you tell me if you see this thing." And I think that tends to make me want to give you feedback again. So it doesn't shut it off. So your response makes it so that you're not shutting down further feedback from people you trust and love. Can you talk a little bit about your process in that? Do you know about that? Have you recognized this in yourself?
Well, I think it's like anything, like the more you invite it, the easier it is to receive it too, right? Like if you're just like not make it a big issue, then I think it just is more comfortable. So, yeah, I don't know what more to say on it about that, but I just think it's like, I think people to this whole conversation, like people really like build up and get scared of like feedback in general, and leaders get afraid of giving feedback. And so if you just like invite it and you're just like, listen, this is just like, if we just both not act like this is a big deal, then it won't be a big deal, you know? And so like, let's just keep talking about it. I would rather like Diana not feel like she has to like tiptoe around me to tell me something that I need to hear that's going to like make me better, or that's like impacting the rest of our team or our clients or whatever. Like, I'd rather she just tell me, because then I know and we're all on the same page. So I don't know if that, I mean, that's my best response to that.
I do like that. I like how you said if we don't make it a big deal, it's not a big deal, right? If we're both okay hearing it and receiving it, then it's not bad.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
just inviting it in.
I wonder, Diana, I think that article you read spoke specifically about Gen Z and their ability to take feedback, right? And then they struggle with it, and said that some consultants are even offering resilience training for Gen Zers to be able to take feedback. I wonder if I'm not sure I 100% agree that Gen Zs are not as good at taking feedback as other generations. So I'm going to start with that. I'm not sure. I suspect it might be younger people are not as good at taking feedback as older people are in general. That's what I think. That's what I would theorize, which would make sense. So I don't know if there's generational effects, but if there are, one of the things I have heard is like in meetings or something, if somebody says, well, I've heard people say there's no such thing as a bad idea. And every time I hear somebody say that, I think that's a bad idea. There is such things as bad ideas. There is dumbassery in the world. Can I say dumbassery? There is dumbassery in the world. And I have said really bad ideas. I have absolutely said bad ideas. And I think that great teams can kind of call each other out on those ideas and say that wasn't a good idea, and trust each other and still feel safe to be able to do that. But do you think it's because we emphasize there's no bad ideas, or like we give too many kudos to good ideas? I'm just curious. I don't know, I'm trying to wrap my mind around that.
No, I think you're right in that younger people are just not as good at receiving feedback as experienced people, right? The older people. And I bet there's something to uh, just the fact that our younger generations are more and more apt to display emotion, right? We've been taught, you know, now with therapy and all of the things that like it's okay to feel your emotions. So I think they're more likely to just be like, this sucks and I don't want to hear, like I'm gonna feel my feelings in the moment. And I don't know. I don't think it's everyone got the trophy. I got the trophy when I was a kid too. I'm of the generation that we all got the trophies, right? I don't know. I think it's just practice.
And I think there's just a lot of, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I just feel like there are a lot of people in the older generation that don't receive feedback very well. So
I think you're right.
Like I think that it's not that the younger generation doesn't know how to receive feedback. Like you said, Don, it's like I think within all generations, my experience is that like, no, I think like, I don't think it's dependent on the generation necessarily, because I know a lot of people who just like, maybe their way of receiving feedback is like, I just won't. I just reject. I just reject that feedback.
Reject your reality and substitute my own.
Which is an option.
We did have a client recently that we met with that said like in the first couple of months of working with me, we gave them a lot of feedback on their management, and they were really frustrated with it and they didn't like it. And they said, I actually felt better for a while before I work with you. Like I felt better about my job. So you're right. There's a little bit when you first get feedback, before you apply the feedback and actually get better on something, which helps you. Like I think the more you complete that cycle, maybe the more open you are to the feedback. And that strikes me. The other piece is I like what you said about the therapy piece, because we've been very open about that. We just did a whole episode on just therapy and like the need for that and all that kind of thing. I think if your response to feedback, negative feedback, is what I described, like you get your heart rate goes up a little bit and you get a little bit upset and you get nervous and that kind of thing, I think that's not an abnormal response that requires therapy. That's a normal response. That's a normal response. I think if you feel outright rage and you feel anger or you feel afraid or you completely shut down and you can't talk, I think that is probably some kind of something triggered in the feedback that you probably should explore, like in a therapy kind of conversation. That's not necessarily a normal response to it. And that doesn't mean, look, I know I'm giving you feedback and I just said you struggle with feedback in that space. That's not that is a response that probably requires a little bit deeper thinking about it. It's not just, okay, well, I'll just take a beat and let that rage subside for me to be able to go at it. You need to do that the first time, but there is an opportunity for you to explore, where's that rage coming from, so that you can understand that, because you can, if you start to understand where that comes from or where that stemmed from, it'll help you to maybe start to react a little bit differently to it, which would help you as well.
Yeah, like it just takes like reps, I think, right? Where it's like you're gonna get better at it, the more feedback you get, the more you are seeking feedback. So like ask for it. Why don't you just ask for it? So you can control like your preparation for that a little bit more, even if you don't know what's going to be said. So it's just like ask for it and just like look for more opportunities. I think that's part of it, where it's like sometimes I just think it's our background and the things are different experiences that people have versus like your age, maybe some of it, and which you would think, again, naturally, like the older that you are, hopefully you've had more reps, hopefully you've had more experiences that have allowed you to figure out like, how do I receive feedback well. But I think there's lots of people who have been in different situations, different experiences, that have allowed them to say like, oh, I had no choice, but like I was going to get feedback, whether I really wanted it or not. And so I had a decision to make them, like how I was going to receive that. And so I think as often as you can, just like look for it, to ask for it.
I like the reps. It takes reps, and the reps are literally you rewiring your brain to make it more responsive to it. It made me think a little bit like this. Not too long ago, my son lived in an apartment downtown, and someone shot out his window. And it wasn't related to him. It was another incident. But imagine you're sitting in your apartment at night, and suddenly you hear gunshots, and then suddenly a bullet comes through your window.
Terrifying.
It's terrifying. I mean, terrifying.
I mean, he was like 20 or something, right? He was a kid too.
Yeah. I mean, he's 22. You know, that'll happen. I mean, so he's terrified. That would terrify me. I'm not 22.
Me too. Yeah.
That would be like you're home, you're safe, and then suddenly you don't feel like you're safe anymore, and it's from a loud noise. And it happened right before the 4th of July. And you know, my son fortunately also works with a therapist. I was talking to the therapist a little bit about that, and the therapist warned him and said, 4th of July might be harder for you this year, and you may not know why. And it's because you're going to relate the sounds of the popping and stuff downtown are going to sound a lot like those gunshots. And so he kind of had a choice. He could have said, well, I'm going to drive off into the country so I don't hear that. Or he could say, I'm going to be aware of that and I'm going to go through that and I'm going to recognize I'm uncomfortable and I'm going to be there with other people. But I got to give my brain reps to respond differently to that noise in the future. And sometimes the trauma or the loud things, if you've had a boss that gives you feedback or comes in and yells at you just automatically, like it's going to be harder for you to take feedback. That doesn't mean that you as an employee can never take feedback, or as a leader or anything like that. If you can never take feedback, it's going to limit your future, your career. You're going to be stressed out. You're going to hate bosses, all that kind of stuff. But it's like Bethany said, if you can take the reps and kind of work through it, it gets easier and easier and easier to be able to do that kind of stuff, especially around people that you trust over time. And that's how you build the trust, by the way, is somebody gives you the feedback. You're like, I know why you're giving me that feedback, because you're trying to help me. I think
I
that's
also
good.
love that Bethany said that you're going to get feedback whether you want it or not. It's going to happen, right? Like you're going to get it in reviews, you're going to get it from coworkers, you're going to get it from your mom. Like you're going to get feedback whether you want it or not. So you might as well figure out how to do that well and how to make the best of it and the most of it. Um, because it's gonna happen. It's just is what it is.
Yeah. Diana, you brought up, I'm just kind of reminding you, you brought up the point earlier of what if the feedback is wrong or unjust?
Oh, oh
I like
yeah.
that point because sometimes we've all gotten feedback and you're like, I don't think you handled that very well. And you're like, actually, I think I handled it pretty darn well given the situation. And I've considered it and I thought about it. And yep, you were wrong on that.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean,
so,
I think I was using a specific example of one time somebody said I was disorganized, and I am a very organized human being. And so, and it was, a leader in our organization. And so I just was like, I was really proud of myself for not reacting how I wanted to react. I wanted to be like, you're a disorganized mess. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. But instead, I just sort of sat back and I was like, okay, what did you see that was disorganized? Or what piece of this did you think was disorganized? Because you saw something. You don't just say that about people without like thinking about it. So you saw, what was it? And so I just dug a little deeper and asked a few more questions. And I also did do the thing where I was like, okay, thank you. I'm going to go think about this. And I went and I asked a few people, like, hey, this person said this. It stems from this moment. What did you see in that? What are you feeling with this? Do you agree with this information? Um, and honestly, three of the people that I asked were like, no, that's crazy. Like, no, I don't hear that. So I was able to be like, okay, maybe this information isn't valid, but at least they feel comfortable enough giving me quote unquote feedback. And they saw something. So I'm going to go back to them and say, I took your feedback. Here's what you saw. Here's how I'm adjusting. It should be fine now. Um, and so I think it was okay, but it did take me a little bit of time to just be okay with it being wrong because it did hit me pretty hard of like, oh, what if they're right? Like, what if I believed this thing about myself forever and it's not actually true? Like, what if they're right? So it did take me a while to get past that one.
yeah, you can't control how the other person gives you the feedback or what feedback they give you. I like that you explored it.
I
I like
did.
that you explored it because,
Yeah.
I mean, look, in my life, the older and older I get, the more and more I get like feedback that I get that I think is wrong, and I look back on it, actually had some base in the truth. There
Mm-hmm.
was something in it. Sometimes it's misdirected or the words are wrong or something, but there's some reason that it's been given that is legit. There's some
Yep.
core of truth in the feedback that I've received in the past and exploring that. But my advice for younger Don would have been to go back and say, but remember that you can't control what they tell you. You can control how you react.
Mm-hmm.
And stay on the high road. You don't have to fight. It's not a fighting for something that's right or wrong. Just roll with it and remember how you influence other people.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry,
No,
Bethany, but I
no,
was
you.
going to say what they saw was their reality, right? What that person saw and said you're disorganized. Whatever they saw something that they thought was disorganized. And while I maybe had the right context or the right information, this person didn't. So I went back and said like, okay, here's what you saw. Here's the context for that. Here's what's happening and here's how I'm going to adjust going forward. And I think with that person, I continually made sure that I was showing a lot of the background so that they didn't feel like it was disorganized again.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
was something there. The words
Yeah.
just really hurt.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what I was going to touch on was like sometimes the person's like I was having a conversation with somebody similar like some about some of this the other day where it was like me, there's this person who has given me this feedback, but I don't get that feedback from anybody else in my life ever. So what is that? And I think some of the conversation was like, well, is it possible that I do that differently with that person or because of the nature of who that person is and I don't respond that way or don't do this thing with the majority of people in my life? And is there a possibility for that? And the answer was like, yeah, that might actually be the case too. So I think it's also like understanding that, like, is this the large, like, do you function in this way for most areas of your life? But the person who's giving this feedback, is it possible that you're doing things a little bit different with them because of the relationship that you have with this person, for whatever that may mean, without going into all the details of that? But does that make sense what I'm saying, broadly speaking there?
It makes sense to me. Yeah, that
Yeah, I
makes a
mean,
lot of sense.
yeah, I think in I can share a little bit. In my situation, I did not believe that this person was a great leader, and I was not a huge fan of this person. And so I'm sure that when I was doing stuff with them, I was showing up differently, right?
Yeah.
I believe that that is true. So I think when they gave that feedback to me, I was really mad.
Yeah.
And they were picking up on things that I was doing differently because of my relationship and my feelings towards them.
Yeah. I think that's it. So I think just being aware of those kinds of things too, that it's like, ooh, that doesn't feel like good feedback, or like, you don't really know me, or that, like being able to understand your tendency of saying, like, maybe is it possible that I'm doing things differently with this person because of how I view this person, or my relationship with this person, or whatever. And just being able to acknowledge that too.
And I'll admit, for a little bit, Don's like, I'm glad you explored it. There was a moment in there where I didn't, and I was like, this dude's dumb. Like, I don't like him already. His opinion is not valid. I am not gonna give credence to this. And then as I sat with it, I was like, okay, maybe I need to just ask around and just triple check this, right? Let me just triple check this information.
Yeah.
And so,
And
yeah, I think
there's no and or there. There's no win-loss there. Both things could be true.
yeah,
That person could have been wrong, and there could have been an insight into it, right? Those all could be true at the same time, which is kind of hard to think about.
Yeah. So, what else should we talk about with feedback? What other feedback should we give on feedback?
It just really strikes me that, if I think about people that I know in my life and that other people know, and you sit around with a group of friends and you talk about somebody who's not there and you're gossiping about a person or whatever, it is really easy for that group to sit back and go like, well, that person should just do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and they would be happier and they could do their life, and you can analyze all that stuff. And then I think about how many times does that person know that you're talking about them and what those recommendations really would be, and like what are the barriers to that. And it's the idea, like, if we don't respond well to feedback, people stop giving us feedback. Diana and I were talking about somebody today who, like, we were like, we have pretty strong feedback for it, and we're like, we're not giving that feedback to that person. That will cut that person out from our life. Like, they will never speak to us again about something. And it's because that person has done it before. You've seen them do it with other people, and they take it personally, and they do all that kind of stuff. And if you're going to do that as a leader, or you want to be a leader someday inside your company, and you don't respond well to feedback, people stop giving it to you, and then you lose a big opportunity to make yourself better and to improve your effectiveness. And if your team stops telling you things, it's kind of an emperor's new clothes situations, right? You just think everything's great, but actually it's not. And then you're the last one to know.
And I think giving and receiving feedback is part of really good relationship building. So if you have people in your life that are your quote unquote friends and you can't give feedback to them because then they're going to cut you out of your life or whatever that looks like that's not good relationship building. And the same goes for it at work, right? I should be able to go to Don at any time and give him feedback, and he should be able to do the same for me. And that will help build our relationship, right? As long as we're doing it well and we're doing it out of kindness and all of those things. But it would ruin our relationship if every time I went to him and I was like, hey, I have something to tell you. And he was like, God, of course you do. You're so critical and I hate you. And I'm sick of you telling me all of the things that are wrong with me. That would not build our relationship.
Yeah, I like that, being open to that. And I also like the idea of, like, you have to give positive feedback sometimes. And by the way, some people don't like that either. And so practice taking the positive relationship. Take the positive feedback, right? Practice that. Allow that to happen. Just take it. Just say thank you. I think of the Wayne's World movie back in my era, right? The guy's like, I love you, man. And he looked at him, he goes, I love you too. And the other guy's like, no, man, I love you. And he goes, yeah, I know, I love you too. And he's, no, man, you don't. And the other guy goes, just say thank you. And I'm like, that's good feedback. Like, just thank you. Thank you for that. You don't have to give the feedback. A lot of times when we get compliments, we feel like, well, I got to tell you something good now too. sometimes it's best just to smile and take it and say, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I always think about the good feedback. I always think about when people say to me, like, oh my God, I love your dress. I feel like I have to say something about it. Like, thank you. It has pockets. This dress has pockets. Or like, I got it for $5.99, right? Whatever the weird response is.
Whatever store.
It's from Macy's or whatever. Yeah, like I thrifted it. I feel like I have to say something in response to their compliment. I can just say thank you. I should just say thank you. Just say thank you.
That's right.
That's good advice. Yeah. Good feedback. Good feedback.
Good feedback. What else, Bethany? What else should we talk about in the terms of feedback? Because you're so good at it. I just want to make sure we've gotten.
I feel like we've covered a lot. I think we've covered a lot.
We did cover a lot. We did.
You don't want my feedback on feedback, Diana? Why'd you only ask Bethany that question?
Well, we just picked on her a lot, and I wanted to give her the chance. But sure, do you have something too?
No, I don't have anything else. I think we covered that a lot. I think it's a good topic. And I think a lot of leaders, if they realized, we focus a lot on management training about how to give feedback. But it's also interesting if you're going to be a leader inside your company, whether you're frontline and you just want to be more influential to your bosses or the people around you, or you want to be an executive or whatever, if you don't take feedback well, you're not going to get good feedback. And if you don't get good feedback, then you're not going to know whether you're being successful or not. And people will give you enough rope that you probably hang yourself in different spots. And it's not going to be good for you. We need each other. We need the outside perspectives. And we're at our best when people can tell us where we're at.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good summary. Okay, well, thank you all for being here with us. Please listen to the outro. Please like and subscribe. And if you guys have questions about feedback, we would love to hear from you. You can listen to the outro to figure out how to get a hold of us. But we appreciate you being here every week, and we will talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.